Please note that the views expressed on this program are those of the individuals who speak them, and not necessarily those of Portsmouth Community Radio, its Board of Trustees, members, volunteers, or underwriters. Good evening and welcome to Spirit Radio. I am your host, Willie Hassell. Along with my co-host, Lynn Nickerson, we will take you on a journey into the unknown, where the paranormal becomes the normal. A journey to a world cloaked in darkness, where reality becomes a thin veil. So sit back, relax, and join us as we venture into the shadows, the darkness, the unknown, and back. And good evening once again, and welcome to Spirit Radio, the paranormal experience. This is the show where the paranormal becomes the normal, and I am your host, Willie Hassell, your gatekeeper to the dark side, your guide to the realm of the unknown, the unseen, the unthinkable. And here she is, of course, the lovely, the mystical, the mysterious Lynn Nickerson. Good evening, Lynn. How are you?
Good evening, Willie. I'm doing just great. How are you? Can you hear me okay?
I cannot hear you at all, actually.
Oh, dear.
So I hope you're there.
Yeah, I'm here. I hope we're going to be able to hear Brad.
Oh, I think we're just going to have to assume that you're there, because I can't barely even hear you. So, anyway.
Can you lip read?
We will proceed as just assuming that you're on the air, I guess.
Okay. Well, tonight we have another interesting guest. He's been on a couple of times before. And do you have your...
I could hear you now.
Oh,
I found the problem.
That's a relief.
Yes, it is. It's quite a relief, actually.
Okay, so maybe you'd like to introduce our guest?
I will do that.
Okay,
on tonight's show, we welcome back once again Brad Olsen. Brad is the owner and operator of CCC Publishing and the author of 9 books. His books have reached a wide audience across the country, and he continues to lecture nationwide on various subjects. He gained the distinction of award-winning author in February 2010 when his travel guide book, Sacred Places in North America, 108 Destinations, won the Bay Area Travel Writers Top Gold Prize Award, first place, for the 2010 Best Travel Book for the Planet Earth category. Brad's latest series is the Esoteric series, Modern Esoteric, Beyond Our Senses, and Future Esoteric, The Unseen Realms, which took the winning category of New Age in the Pinnacle Book Achievement Awards.
Wow.
Brad was also interviewed on the hit History Channel TV series Ancient Aliens for 2 episodes in Season 6. His commentaries have been featured on Coast to Coast AM, National Public Radio, CNN, and Travel Channel, among others. And tonight he is joining us. This is his 3rd visit to Spirit Radio. He is joining us to talk about Future Esoteric. And it is a pleasure, once again, to welcome to Spirit Radio, Brad Olsen. Good evening, Brad.
Hello, Brad. Welcome.
Hi there, Willie.
Hi, Brad. Good evening.
Yeah, well, a little technology, our best friend and worst enemy sometimes.
I know it. Boy, that wasn't any fun at all. I don't know what happened there.
Well, hey, we're rolling now.
We are now. We are. So thank you for joining us once again on Spirit Radio.
And thank you for your patience.
Oh, it's always great to speak with you both.
Same here. Well, as I've said before, you've done an amazing job at organizing and presenting this broad range of information. And it's a reflection of hours and weeks of research. And it's presented in a logical, sequential manner and within context, so it's really easily understood and absorbed by the reader. So I personally thank you for the wonderful job that you've done in presenting this broad scope of information to the public's attention. Brad, you've done a great job. Now, for the benefit of those who are not familiar with your esoteric book trilogy, I'd like to read a brief summary of the first 2 books so that everyone will have a reference point for tonight's discussion. So, your first book, Modern Esoteric, begins as a history lesson of life on planet Earth. Then the focus turns to how the world's populace is being deceived and controlled in order to stunt our ability to thrive. In the third section, an attempt is made to wake us up as a species to our true nature so that we will know how to change our reality and live free of deceit and oppression in order to reach our maximum potential as human beings. Now, in your second book, Future Esoteric, which we'll be discussing tonight, that begins with the secrets of now. That is, who is withholding information from us, what their agenda is, and how it's personally important to us all. The second section, titled Cosmos, probes the dilemmas of space travel, ETs, the complexity of time in multiple dimensions, as well as other realities. And thirdly, in the section titled Utopia, the reader is introduced to the possibility of a world far different from today, where teleportation, anti-gravity, free energy, and long-term personal health are commonplace, minus societal harm, control, or enslavement. So, I didn't know if you had a particular jumping off point that you wanted to start with, Brad, but Willie and I do have several unanswered questions, so perhaps you'd like to take the lead on where you'd like to go.
Sure. Well, Future Esoteric is the second book in the Esoteric series after Modern Esoteric, Beyond Our Senses, which we spoke about the last time I was on your show. And basically, the way I describe the 2 books to people to make them understand the distinction is that Modern Esoteric is everything looking back, all the mystery school traditions and a lot of the wisdom that had been withheld from people, from the mass amount of people for so long, but now we're coming into it. Whereas Future Esoteric takes a more forward-looking stance, hence the name, and gets into a more modern, everything is 20th century and beyond into the future with Future Esoteric, and looking at some of the challenges that we face in this 21st century in the control section, and then getting in secrets, and then getting into the very tangled web, so to speak, on the subject of extraterrestrial and UFOs in the Cosmos section. And I always like to end my books on a positive note. So the final section, as you mentioned in the setup, is called Thrive, and that's how we can become better people. I'm sorry, Utopia. Thrive is the final section in Modern Esoteric. And in Utopia, it's very much looking into the possibilities of a brighter future and what we can expect if things work in a positive fashion, and we can take control of civilization and our lives and the world and make the place a better world to live in.
Well, a lot of your stuff is amazingly timely. Now, there's a section in there on space weaponry and SDI and so forth, and you were talking about Ronald Reagan, and you were questioning whether or not, let me see if I can get this quote here. The question is asked, can you hear me all right, by the way, Brad? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Did Reagan...
You guys are coming in kind of faint, but I'm picking up most of it, and there's...
The question is asked...
Static on the line, too.
There is static. Did Reagan always want an anti-missile shield in space, or was he simply following a plan set in motion long before he became president? And I pose this issue only because just recently I found an article on the internet stating that a force field has been discovered about 7,000 miles above Earth in the form of 2 rings that have the capability of warding off excessive radiation from the sun. So I'm wondering if this might have something to do with the anti-missile shield in space that Reagan was talking about?
That's a great observation and question, and I think we're starting to find that there are these wormholes or ways to travel interdimensionally, not only very close to our planet, but also within our various places in the solar system and throughout the universe. Kind of bring this up in the time and space section. I mean, if we're going to jump right into it, into the deep end, this is about as deep as the rabbit hole goes, because then this is conceptual physics meeting backward engineered ET technology, meeting the so-called breakaway civilization that may have this information and technology at their disposal. And what they're doing with it, either on planet or off planet, is a big mystery. And what I do with the Esoteric series is just try to link up data points. That is, try to find a common denominator between all the different various aspects of a certain subject and come together and create a cohesive narrative. And as you said, with Reagan and these recent discoveries, I mean, oftentimes I'm just amazed to see a lot of this stuff becoming confirmed through various sources and new information that comes out.
It wasn't really clear what kind of a shield this is, but it seems to be what could prevent the Earth from serious radiation if there were more solar outbursts, and to prevent another Earth calamity. But since it's electromagnetic, I didn't know if perhaps this had something to do with SDI, the Strategic Defense Initiative. What do you think?
Right.
Do you think it's man-made?
The electromagnetic field, which surrounds our planet, also known as the Schumann resonance, is also a big aspect of how the HARP array works and how Tesla technology, including tapping into the free energy that is emitted by our planet, can be tapped and harnessed, as Nikola Tesla was working on over 100 years ago. I mean, this is how stunted free energy technology is. Over 100 years ago, we could have been moving in this direction and tapping into the electromagnetic field, the Schumann resonance, and bringing this technology into a benevolent use for the human race instead of burning fossil fuels and destroying the planet and the atmosphere. So this is the challenge that we're up against, is trying to understand all this, for one, but also releasing it to the people, which is a very slow process, as you know. I mean, we still haven't even made full recognition of disclosure of the ET presence at all. I just posted a really interesting Life magazine cover from 1952, and Marilyn Monroe is on the cover. It's on my Facebook Facebook page for the Esoteric book series. And one of the captions was, new evidence for interdimensional travel planetary spaceships. And it's like, wow, we're over 60 years past that, and we still haven't caught up to speed. So it's just frustrating sometimes to live in this world, know what we know, and still have to fill up our tanks with gasoline.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. How about space portals? You did mention the trip to Serpo that some of our, 12 of our astronauts took.
Yep.
That really seems like it's, again, stretching believability, but apparently they traveled 10 months, and after 5 months, they reached this certain place in space. I don't know how you define a point in space, but there was a portal that apparently is relatively stationary so that they can zip through it and get to their planet, Serpo, in an amazing short amount of time. Because otherwise, I guess it would take quite a few years. It was 37 light years away.
Yeah, that would be a wormhole, wouldn't it?
That would be.
Yeah.
Yes, that's correct. It was a wormhole.
So do you suppose this is something that kind of morphs in and out, or do you think it's almost like a semi-stationary spot, even though it's kind of diaphanous, I would think? It's probably not even
Well, my
diaphanous.
understanding is there is a fairly permanent wormhole at our North Pole, which is a direct line to the star system of Vega.
Of Vega?
And I don't think that's near the Zeta Reticuli system where the planet Serpo is located. But they use some of that similar technology. And my understanding is it took several months just to get the crew out of Area 51 up to the mothership, and then get the mothership out of our solar system in a position to make this jump through the wormhole. And then it was the same multi-month process to bring the astronauts down to the planet Serpa. Now, all of those astronauts who made the trip have passed away since then, and all this information is being released by one of the alternates who didn't actually go, but was on standby and had been privy to all the downloads and information that they were talking about the mission.
That person
he's still alive. He is still talking.
He must have read the commander's notes then, right? He was the person? How did he have access?
He was in on all the meetings and training sessions, so he knew what they were going through, and then in real time they're monitoring
what's going on,
in the late 60s, early 70s.
But whoever was helping leak this information had seen the commander's notes. He was the one taking daily notes, so that would have been subsequent to their return. So
it's a fascinating tale. And
it is.
Carrie Cassidy's partner at Project Camelot, he was actually one of the first people to break the story.
Really?
And he did many interviews with this gentleman who survived. But, sometimes it just comes down to, if it's only one person telling the narrative, then you just have to take it with a grain of salt that it's coming from a single source.
Right, but then it starts coming from like
but
three.
In this case, there were corroborations with some people who worked at Area 51, and then people like Bob Lazar, who was also describing some of the technology that these Zeta Greys were employing, who were the same species of ET that we created this treaty, the Griada Treaty, which is renewed every 10 years. And incidentally, this is the fourth year in the decade. 2014 apparently is set to be renewed, or has been already renewed for another decade. Of course, Earth humans are not privy to any of this, and we certainly don't have a say in the matter. And we just have to go on whistleblower testimony and other deathbed confessions by aerospace people or military or sometimes even politicians when they're finally ready to say, hey, the world needs to know this. The world has a right to know this, and I'm fully in agreement with that mentality that the human race has a right to know.
They do.
All this information that I write about in my esoteric series of books. That's my main motivation for doing it.
Brad, who do you think, or what species do you feel the people from Serpo are? They weren't exactly Greys, although they did resemble them. Do you think they were hybrids of the Greys?
Well, that's a great question, and there is quite a bit of evidence now that there are hybrid Greys who are mixed with human DNA. In fact, that's what the abduction scenario is largely about, is extracting certain bodily fluids, sometimes even body parts, and sometimes our DNA, to work on these genetic experiments. And the place that's being done here in North America is way deep down on level 9, 10, and 11 at Dulce, New Mexico, at the underground base there. And indeed, I have a chapter in Future Esoteric called Underground Bases, which describes some of these things that are going on at Dulce. But they're also going on in the UK. There's a base below 2 Air Force fields and a whistleblower testimony. But really, to say that the Greys are responsible for this, and even though they are the most recognized entity on abduction scenarios, it's a little ingenuous to say that they're doing it all, because they actually have masters, so to speak.
The Dracos?
Entities that are above them. And those are the reptoid or reptilian, Draco, reptilian ETs, which are taller than humans, built very strong, and are very strong animals themselves. And unfortunately, they have a taste for human blood. So they look at us very contemptuously in the comparison of how humans view livestock, cattle and pigs and chickens.
They consider us animals.
Kind of akin to how they view us.
Yep, because we've got the monkey gene, according to them, so we're savages.
Right. And we're like the planet of the apes. And they have no problem watching us kill ourselves off.
No, or eating us.
But I have a problem with that.
I do, too. Do you think that it's just the Dracos, they're Dracos, did you say? Dracos? Draconians?
Draconians.
That are involved?
Draco ETs, I call
them. What do they call them?
Well, you could call them reptilians, reptoids, or Draco ETs. There's a constellation
Draco ETs, yep.
Called Draco. And I think that's even where the term draconian comes from.
Right, it is. So, do you think that they're the only ones that are involved in these deep underground bases that are doing this, the devil's work, the hybridization, the genetic manipulation? Or do you think there are others that are involved that don't have our best interest in mind?
Well, that's interesting you said the devil's work, because in the conclusion of Future Esoteric, I make the case that indeed all the apparitions of Satan or the devil or Lucifer are actually these Draco ETs, which have been tricking us for many eons. I mean, they've been here for upwards of 7,000 years. And when I say been here, meaning they consider themselves to be of and from Earth. So to have them doing this and manipulating us is very, very interesting, because it really answers a lot of questions as far as what's going wrong with the world in some ways. And I love the Bill Cooper quote from the UFO Congress, where he makes the statement that back in '89 he said this, that it has been learned that the ETs have been manipulating human society through witchcraft, magic, the occult, and religion.
Yeah.
And it took me a long time to wrap my head around that perhaps the ETs, these malevolent ETs who look quite contemptuously down on us, have been directing human civilization for thousands of years.
For a long time. Well, Brad, what about the aspect of the Catholic Church and the Vatican? I've heard some terrible things, that there's a whole faction of the Catholic Vatican that is into the black arts. But very little is spoken about it.
Could you repeat the question?
How do you feel about the connection between the black arts and some of the individuals at the Vatican?
Did you say Black Rock, like the
black arts?
Oh, the men in black, or
no, the priests or the cardinals being involved.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, in the Catholic Church, you're talking the hierarchy and the Black Pope, this Jesuit. Well, it's great that you brought that up, because this could be a segue to another guest. In my capacity as a book publisher, I am going to publish a book called Pope Francis, the Last Pope.
Really?
Occultism, Money, and Masonry in the Decline of the Catholic Church. And that's going to come out by CCC Publishing in April 2015 by an Italian insider whistleblower named Leo Lion Zagami.
Oh, you mentioned him, yes.
Reading and editing his book and coming to understand the incredible deception that is coming out of the Vatican.
Yeah.
It's incredible. And then, yes, to have this black pope, and then Pope Francis himself being a Jesuit. And boy, the Jesuits, they have a lot of skeletons in their closet too, as well as Bergoglio. Jorge Bergoglio, who is Pope Francis, was the leading Jesuit priest in Argentina during the time of the Dirty Wars. So he's got a lot of skeleton in his closet, and they're not revealing that too openly either.
Who was the one that was selling a product to the Nazis before he got into the priesthood? Wasn't that Pope Francis?
Yes, that's right. And of course, the Vatican was responsible for the rat lines and giving a lot of SS officers after World War II new passports and money and new identities to escape Nazi Germany right at the end of the war and then start new lives in South America and right here in the good old USA under Project Paperclip. And indeed, one of the chapters in Future Esoteric is called The Fourth Reich in America.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the New World Order rhetoric and even some of the actions that we see taking place today are a direct result of this New World Order directive, which, by the way, was spoken of by Adolf Hitler himself. So this is really a direct descendancy of this kind of fascism, which is now rearing its very ugly head here.
It's becoming evident,
too, in the form of Homeland Security and the Patriot Act and so many other things, NDAA.
And Brad, you've also got a picture, and I believe it's Modern Esoteric, of Hitler and the Pope at the time. Hitler met the Pope, or was meeting with the Pope, and there's a picture of it in your book. I'm pretty sure it was your book. Does that sound familiar to you?
Or the fact that Ratzinger is still alive, and that this is a very unprecedented feature in the papacy to have two popes alive. In fact, they live in the same building,
really?
Which was revealed in Leo Lion-Zagami's book, that the Pope Francis himself does not want to be in the papal quarters, and in fact, he is in a rear building where Ratzinger himself lives.
Now, why do you
suppose? And it's a pretty good possibility, according to Leo Zagami, that the current pope is not the real pope, that Ratzinger is still the reigning pope, or at least the one who makes the big decisions, but not the face
to the
that
public.
We see on television, which is the new Pope Francis.
Well, why do you suppose that is? Why do you suppose there was a switchover then?
Well, he was under a lot of pressure, Ratzinger was, mainly over the pedophilia scandal.
Okay, because I was going to bring that up.
And when this thing breaks, it's going to be a lot more prolific than we've been led on to believe, that it was happening for a long time and may still be happening
on
a widespread scale in Catholic dioceses around the world. So they have a lot of answering to, and I think the pressure was just too much on Ratzinger. He couldn't handle it. Plus, he's aging, and maybe his excuse was he just couldn't function in that capacity anymore and wanted to step down.
So we've got the same sort of situation where, as in Russia, what's his name, the leader of Russia, he's back in power again.
Putin?
Yeah. Because he had stepped aside for a while. Now he's back. So I can understand Ratzinger still directing. They do that stuff from behind the scenes,
Yeah, how Putin resurfaced.
Right.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. Well then, you were mentioning the Dracos again. I have read that that there are underground cities, and that they've been on the planet for a long time underground, and there are several of these Native Americans like the Navajo and the Hopi that they have myths of having come from under the earth. So how long do you suppose the Dracos have been here?
The best estimation that I've come to, and that's just matching the most amount of data points, say around 7,700 years. Let's say between 8,000 and 7,000 years. They have been here. So all the Dracos that are on planet, we're all born here, and so are their parents and grandparents and so on and so forth. Now, they're very few in numbers, but they're also very powerful because they have fourth dimensional abilities, which we humans don't, nor do we have a way of defending ourselves against that kind of power. So they do have a way of appearing as apparitions, say for like satanic ritual, and then they have the ability to shadow people, and that's what is said is happening with many of our top leaders, is that they are shadowed by these Archon, Draco type entities who get them to do their bidding. And we've all heard the saying, sell your soul to the devil. Well, that's kind of what it is. Once you agree, okay, I do want to be famous, I want to be a top politician, or I want to be a millionaire, and I want to do all these things and control, then you make that deal.
Yeah.
If you don't live up to it, you may pay the ultimate price, and they'll either take those things away or sometimes even kill you. So there very much is a pact to continue on these nefarious deeds for these nefarious entities. And this is what is going wrong in the world today. And until we expose this, and it can be exposed quite easily, as I point out in the Utopia section, is using Kirlian photography to identify the aura of people and be able to tell if they're being shadowed and if they have a psychotic personality and cannot feel compassion or the pain that they're causing to the rest of the world. Well, these are the people we want to get out of there. And this is how we can do it quite easily. But there has to be enough of us to understand what's really going on and then to employ this technology. Because wouldn't it be interesting to get all our politicians in the world behind a Kirlian camera and see their aura or see what other kind of entities might be following around? I think it would be quite a reveal for the human race to see that.
Well, that falls into line because these Dracos, I thought, did not have a soul matrix. So it would stand to reason that our leaders might not if they wind up selling their soul, so to speak.
Right. Well, they certainly don't have any kind of allegiance to humans. Now, whether or not they have a soul or not, I don't think I can answer that. Now, I do know that there are certain species of greys
that
are said to have no soul.
Yeah.
But those are synthetic beings. This is something people need to understand, is that most of the gray species, and by the way, there are several, they're all synthetic. They're all test tube. They're all created. However, they are endowed with fourth dimensional abilities and are trained to be servants to these Draco ETs, who are really the ones calling the shots.
Okay, well, that brings me to the next subject. How about Men in Black? Now, I know that they're believed to be the workhorse team behind many secret black ops projects around the world because they always seem to have detailed information on the people they contact as if they've been under surveillance for some time. So what is your theory on who the Men in Black are, Brad?
Yeah, I think the Men in Black are actually these hybrid ETs.
Do you?
Which are partly human, because they do look partly human, although there are telltale signs about them that really give them away, that they have no facial or body hair. So their heads have wigs on them.
Yeah.
They don't have eyelashes or eyebrows. I mean, they're really strange looking. That's why they wear those glasses. And they find things like ballpoint pens to be very unusual and don't know how to use them as writing utensils or even forks or knives for that matter. So there's things that give them away as well as their incredible telepathic abilities. And that's what happens when they come in contact with anybody who has had a very fresh and new ET UFO experience.
Yeah.
They will come, sometimes even before that person is even able to make a phone call.
That's
or
right.
talk to anybody else. They will appear. That's why the leading thought about them is that they too are fourth dimensional and do have a way of phasing into our reality in the Soul Express purpose of quieting ET abduction or UFO witnesses to make them feel afraid. And that's the general consensus of people who have encountered them, is to strike fear into the
Still
subject
fear.
so that they
Yep.
will not speak about whatever paranormal experience they just had.
Okay, what I'm wondering, Brad, what I'm trying to figure out is, do the men in black, do they actually work for the government, do you think, or are they?
Well, I have a Men in Black chapter in Future Esoteric, and I do point out all the possibilities. One of the possibilities is, yes, they're government agents and very much human, and there's these super secret divisions in which they work for. And I guess it really depends on whether or not you believe that the Griota Treaty, which is created through the U.S. government and some of these malevolent ETs, is indeed real. And if we go on the assumption that it is real, that we are in this treaty with some of these malevolent ETs, which I think is completely null and void and has to be agreed upon by the people of Earth, so it's really unjustified to use it as a reason for doing what they do. But in the event that we think the Griota Treaty is with these malevolent ETs, that the malevolent ETs are sending out their agents or these hybrids to do their bidding.
Well, there was also some idea in there about them being hybrids from the future coming back. What do you think about that?
Well, that's a great question. I think this is really as deep as the rabbit hole goes. And if your listeners want to check out this guy named Dan Birish,
Oh, yes.
I was really into him when I was doing my Time and Space chapter in Future Esoteric and looking at the possibilities of Timeline 1 and 2, like where are we going in the future, and that entities of the future are coming back to this present time to manipulate certain events that will occur that could steer the course of history one way or another.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is when it truly gets mind-blowing.
It's mind-blowing. It is. Well, Will, were you going to say something about our MIBs? We did talk about that even last week. Same exact MO. It happened to a doctor in Maine in like 1976. Everything you mentioned, they looked the same. They did the same thing. They were at his door a couple of hours after he did a regression on an abduction victim or contactee experiencer. Same MO. So these just aren't isolated incidences that you're talking about. It's happening. It's pervasive. It's all over the world.
It is all over the world, just as the abduction phenomenon is clearly worldwide.
Yeah.
Now, the animal mutilation phenomenon, while there are incidents in other countries and it is also worldwide, is mostly resigned to our Midwest and our mountainous region, most specifically the San Luis Valley.
Oh, yes, Chris
Now, if your
O'Brien.
listeners remember the first time I was on your show and we talked about one of my books in the Sacred Places series, the San Luis Valley in southern central Colorado is very much a sacred place and has been worshipped by Native American people for thousands of years and have many features in the landscape, both the Great Sand Dunes, the Segura Cristo Mountains, Mount Blanco, Crestone, Colorado, which is like the UFO capital of this area. And the San Luis Valley is the first place where animal mutilations occurred. Now, the Arcoleta Mesa, where this supposed very deep alien and human base resides, is right on the border of Colorado and New Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not very far away from the San Luis Valley at all. And just on the other side of the Front Range in Colorado is the NORAD base in Cheyenne Mountain, which is one of the original and most sturdy of the underground bases. It could withstand a direct nuclear bomb hit on Cheyenne Mountain and still be operational.
Wow.
Cheyenne Mountain is a granite mountain, and they have dug into this thing, and now it's connected to the Denver airport, which is very expansive, one of the largest underground bases in the world, as well as magnetic Leviton trains that connect two other bases in New Mexico and Arizona, including Dulce and Los Alamos.
Well, I was thinking about getting into the labs down in the Dulce, but I'd rather just kind of forgo that tonight because it's so darn depressing. So, what I did wanted to talk to you about was also crop circles and the moon. I'm really fascinated by the moon, so maybe we can touch on that. There's several strange bits of information that you came up with. I'm dying to know what your feeling is on this. You mentioned that there is a standard orbit that's almost circular to the moon. By that, did you mean that the moon does not rotate on its axis? Do you feel that it does?
Well, the moon has a slight wobble, and it is slowly making its way, I believe it's away from the Earth. It's a little off every year. It changes every year. So the moon is quite a phenomenon because the size of the moon related to the Earth is off.
Right.
The distance is off. It's way too big to be a moon of a planet our size, as well as the fact that most of the astronauts who went there said that it appeared to be hollow.
Yeah,
It was
I know.
a ringing sound when the landers touched down, that they vibrated.
That's
like
right.
in the way when you hit a bell, it still vibrates for a few seconds later. That it had this kind of resonance to it, like a big metal shell. And with all the mining operations that appear to be going on the moon, that there are also quite a bit of theories that indeed it is, that it's being used for mining purposes. And
but, you know, when
there are photos of it. I include photos in Future Esoteric of some of the mining operations and some of the even cities that can be seen, different apparitions such as lights appearing from craters. I think it's Copernicus crater. I'm
Copernicus?
pronouncing that right, but it has this very strange effect of having lights coming. And
Coming
here's
out of
a
it,
little tidbit, and I've brought this up on a few of the radio shows I've been doing on Future Esoteric, and I'm still waiting for someone to prove me wrong, but my understanding is not a single one of the large telescopes in this country,
can photograph the moon.
Mauna Kea and Mount Griffith and all the big telescopes that are operated by the U.S. government, they're not allowed to focus in on the moon.
Right. They're not allowed to take photographs, yeah.
You can't even take photographs of where they landed the Apollo mission.
Isn't that crazy? It makes you think they're hiding something, doesn't it?
What will happen if they go there? Now, this whole new subject of space tourism, Sir Richard Branson and Virgin Galactic going up there, and then wasn't it a bad stroke of luck that SpaceX couldn't go up with tourists, and now Virgin Galactic had that accident, and now they're delayed many years?
Oh.
Well, what do you think people would see when they're in near orbit of Earth?
Oh, I didn't hear about that.
Probably a lot of activity. And so for as long as they're going to keep this going, and it seems like the cracks are forming to a point where it may be all the disclosure is going to come out from many different sources as it is, having people in outer space taking their own photos and saying, well, we saw ships, we saw things we can't explain, that would just
hard to hide
open the dam, so to speak.
Well, do you think then that the Earth is metal and artificial? Because it did mention the astronauts drilling and pulling steel filings out of their shavings out of their drill bit.
You mean the moon? Yeah, I do.
The moon.
Actually, I do think it is
if that's
quite metallic, and that's the reason for the mining operations on there.
Because there's so much metal? But it's hollow,
because
isn't
it's primarily metal. And then there's also the theory that it's not even of our solar system.
Well, sure, because it's older.
The moon rotate in different directions.
Oh,
and that really makes no sense. If it came out of our solar system, it should have the same rotational direction as all the other planets, but it doesn't.
And it should also have about the same age.
There's belief that it was brought here, that it was moved into place for the sole reason of controlling Earth. And this is like the Dark Knight satellite that rotates around the planet. This is the Force Shield, which primarily operates off the Earth. Now, I understand it's also on Mars and some of the moons on Mars. And that is what attracts human souls upon death. The light at the end of the tunnel scenario, that it will take you to a place where it will zap your memory or reduce it in such a sense that you have a hard time recovering your past life recalls when you're reincarnated once again here on Earth. That it's this force field trap, and it's also keeping planet Earth in a state of quarantine.
Oh,
and that
gosh.
also is impeding our spiritual development at the present time.
I haven't heard that, but I can see why it might be suggested. How about the fact that the moon is supposed to be shrinking?
The moon may be shrinking. Yeah, well,
How?
if it's hollow, might be caving in on itself.
Maybe so.
Be the case.
But Brad, so you do feel that the moon does rotate on its axis, or not?
I'm not actually sure about that.
I'm not either, and I'm trying to get as much information as possible because we could only see like 58% of the moon to one side, and I just
That's right,
can't.
and it's so odd that we never get a glimpse of the dark side. And
I
in
know.
fact, when the first Apollo astronauts went around it, people on Earth were able to listen to their conversations with Houston via ham radios. And they called ET bases or craft Santa Claus. And Neil Armstrong said several times, "We see Santa down there." And all these references to Santa Claus, and why would he be saying that? Because it was a code word for
Flying
we're
saucers,
seeing ET
UFOs.
life. So the backside of the moon is very active. And if we were ever to really do a true reconnaissance of the moon, we would find it teeming with life, including several bases, including some which are run by the breakaway civilization of Earth, here and on Mars. There are humans. We've been there. We've been to Mars for decades.
I know it.
And we
And
work
Venus.
in conjunction with ETs on the Red Planet.
Now you say a breakaway civilization. What do you mean by that?
Well, the breakaway civilization was a term coined by Richard Dolan, who's a big UFO scholar.
Yeah.
And Richard has several books about it, the UFO disclosure and where we're at and so forth. And he coined the term that there are these humans who are basically trained in special services in the military. And David Hatcher Childress, the good friend of mine, he said that they come from the submarine. They come from Navy operations because they're already used to working in very confined spaces and under different pressures. And then they'll basically give them an offer. Hey, you want to go off planet on a very top secret mission? Oftentimes they will never return. It is a one-way ticket to Mars. They decide to do that, not entirely knowing that at the time, but there's too much at stake
For
to
them
allow
to come
them
back
to come
and
back. Now, that's
reveal.
not to say that nobody ever has, and some of them have and are indeed whistleblowers. And there's a guy right now who says he was on Mars for 17 years.
Really?
Doing the dirty work and fighting off malevolent ETs who tried to overrun their bases and so forth.
Do you have that name,
So,
Brad? Do you have his
I'm
name?
trying to remember. I want to say Turner. I want
Okay.
to say Captain Turner. He goes by Captain. It's Captain K, K-A-Y-E. Captain K. You could look him up.
Great.
And he, I think Kerry Cassidy's done interviews with him with Project Camelot and a few other sources that he's been giving interviews.
We're coming to the end of the show. I wanted to ask you really quickly if there was anything you wanted to touch on as far as the solution to the New World Order, what would you suggest that people do?
Well, really, it's all about raising our personal consciousness.
Well put.
When people think they don't have anything in their power that they can do, they're wrong, because their power is their intuition and their consciousness. And to really educate yourself and learn these things and feel them intuitively. Like, I don't want anybody to believe anything that I've said tonight without them doing their own research on these subjects. And these are all part of the data points that I've collected for these esoteric guides.
And you do 3 on each
when
issue.
you put these all together, when you connect the dots, you truly become a better person. I have found. You become smarter, stronger, healthier, much more aware. And when this happens, and when enough of us do this and raise our consciousness, we can indeed affect change on this planet. And that's what I hope your listeners would attempt to do.
Okay.
All right.
Well, just about the end, but before we wrap this up, Brad, what is going to be the name of this third book in your series, and when is it coming out?
The Last Pope will be out in April 2015, and then I have Confessions of an Illuminati Part 1, 2, and 3, which will come out every 6 months. But my third book in the Esoteric series, that's still off like 2017, called Beyond Esoteric. That's still very much in the formulation stage.
Oh, okay. Esoteric and the Last Pope.
Sure was great talking to you guys. I can't believe an hour went by so quick.
I know.
We're sorry about all that
The confusion
at the beginning there. I don't know what was going on.
So would you like to push your website?
Well, comes with the territory.
Yeah.
I'm glad we got a good solid 45 minutes to speak.
Yeah, well, we thank you very much, Brad, for coming on and joining us again.
And would you like to mention your website, Brad?
Yeah, of course. Your listeners can go to cccpublishing.com. That's 3 C's in publishing.com, one word. And there they can read all the books. I set the Google Book setting at 100%, so I don't mind if people want to browse and read them. You can pick up a title there. I also have Esoteric series on YouTube, and I'm about to upload my lecture for Modern Esoteric at the book launch party. You can follow me on Facebook. Brad Olsen 108 is my public domain, and Esoteric Book Series is the Facebook name, as well as the Sacred Places 108 Destinations. I have a Facebook page for that. So I just post interesting and pertinent material on those Facebook pages, keep it relevant, including recent interviews and so forth.
Okay.
And if you want to know more about me and some of the projects I work on, it's bradolsen.com, OLSEN.com.
Great. Well, we're all out of time, Brad, so thank you very much, and thanks for your patience.
Yes, thank you very much,
You're
Brad.
very welcome. Great speaking to you all, and have a great weekend.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thank you. You too.
All right. Take care. Good night.
Good night.
And we are way over time. So that is it. Spirit Radio, the Paranormal Experience.
Good night, everyone. Thanks for listening.